Hey, what's up? I'm Guy. That's John. And we got to talk about Drew Brees.
But before we dive into the Hall of Fame quarterback guy, check out our YouTube page, subscribe. Also, check out our podcast below in the description.
That's right. And give this video a like. All right, John. I don't know if you saw this. ESPN Stats and Info said Drew Brees is averaging 4.8 air yards per pass this year. It's his lowest through 2 games as a member of the Saints and the lowest through 2 games of any quarterback since Brett Favre in 2009. I didn't need that stat to tell me he looks different this year, although you could argue he looked different last year. Are we seeing the end? And not just because we know he's got a contract for TV next year.
Yeah, to me, he looked different toward the end of the season because remember, he was awesome in that Niner game when it was a shootout. I think he threw 5 touchdowns. I just think we need to come to grips with what we've seen the last couple of years out of a couple of these guys. It's not going to be the thing of the norm, and it shouldn't be. When we grew up, once you got to like you're 40 years old, hell, 37, 38, it was like this guy is down the home stretch of his career. And I think Brady really changed the game because I think Peyton Manning became normal. He fell off a cliff. Now, Drew Brees, even last night, right, was not Peyton Manning that last year in Denver when he couldn't throw a ball from, 5 feet. It was awful. But I think it's clear, like the Hall of Fame Drew Brees, the Pro Bowl Drew Brees, the guy that had some of those moments on Monday or Sunday Night Football where he'd break records and all of his boys were there, and they'd go back in, he'd throw more touchdowns, and it was like, is this guy a stat manipulator? Did you always believe he was a little bit of a stat manipulator? Did you say that to me one time? It's okay.
Did.
We could just be real.
I don't know. I go back and forth because I do think I think it's wrong to punish a guy for playing for a good coach, playing in the right offense, for having continuity, for having good players around him. So, at the end of the day, yeah, maybe. But then it turns out the whole league's been trying to do it, and no one's replicating what this guy did in his prime. I mean, only the best replicate what this guy did in his prime.
Yeah, but I think, for example, if we used Drew Brees' comp historically, right? He's thought of as the most accurate passer of all time. The other guy was Steve Young. And Drew Brees is going to accumulate way more stats. I know I saw both of them in their prime. I wouldn't even hesitate. I'd take peak Steve Young over Drew Brees. I would imagine you'd agree.
I would agree.
If I just had. But I'm not. This is not about diminishing Drew Brees' career. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He should receive. I know he won't, but like close to 100% of the votes. He should go to the Hall of Fame. He's a Super Bowl champ. He changed the franchise. But he was a guy that got by on limited physical tools. And he's even acknowledged, like, my game has been way more about up here than down here, this arm. And I think you're starting to see this arm now. He was always, to me, like almost not even this good, but like Greg Maddux type. Like he was getting by on unreal location. He wasn't throwing 98 miles an hour as a quarterback, right? And now as a baseball equivalent, it kind of feels like he was throwing 91 in his peak. Is he now throwing like 87? And he's not quite as accurate, and he's just older. And every time he gets hit, it's going to be difficult. He's 40 years old. Like, shouldn't we just be okay with saying, yeah, this is it. He's a shell of himself. And when I say that, it sounds way worse than it actually is because his standard was a top 10 potential quarterback of all time.
Yeah, I mean, his standard was at times one of the best players in the NFL, right? And it wasn't just that he was a 70 or 68% passer. He was also leading the league in yards. He was really explosive. He was throwing high 30s touchdowns, which really hasn't been the case for the last 4 years. But he was still good enough to go win an NFC Championship game, like you said, toe-to-toe in that Niner game. I don't think he's good enough to win the NFC Championship game anymore. Now, part of this is like he didn't have Michael Thomas. That's a big deal. The older you get, like anybody, you just need better players around you. So I think what we see is he just can't in his prime, the best quarterbacks could do this. They just elevate everyone around him. He still elevates because, like you said, he's smart, but he's going to elevate Michael Thomas. He's not going to elevate Michael Thomas's replacement. He still needs Michael Thomas. He needs Alvin. He needs multiple weapons around him. And, I think we could probably – when we had this conversation after week 1, because my take after week 1 was people are overreacting to Brady and underreacting to the way that Brees looked. I thought Brees did not look like the quarterback of a team that scored 34 points week 1, and I think it's proving to be true. And you said to me, well, shouldn't we have learned this lesson last year when they didn't get to the NFC Championship game, when they lost at home in the playoffs?
In the first round. They didn't even get to the second round.
And I think you're right about that. Now, again, fair point by you. This isn't what Peyton looked like at the end. He's not. I don't think Drew is going to stumble to the finish line. This isn't stumbling, but I think it's
That's
I don't
the
think
worst
there's going
case,
to
right? That was like Willie Mays on the Mets. I've always heard it and see, but that was hard to watch.
Yeah,
even though
this
it's
guy
crazy he won the
belongs.
Super Bowl.
You're going to be hard pressed to have Sean Payton replace him with Jameis Winston this year, right?
Yeah, but I feel very, very confident. This is Drew Brees' last season, right? He's not going to play after this year, and there is a chance that it could get actually much uglier. And when I say, again, their standard, right? That it's harder than we think to make the playoffs. Like, are they competing to win 9-10 games? A lot more difficult than I think we all just marked them. They're going to win 12 because that's how I thought. And now it's like, a lot of that is just dependent on him throwing up these crazy stats, their offense being good. Is it going to be a lot? Guy, they struggled to score points on the Raiders, whose defense is not good. That, to me, is the problem, right? The Raiders' defense is not good, and Drew Brees looked pretty pedestrian.
Yeah.
And you can give me, well, he threw 300 yards. We all watched it, and I think we all tend to agree. Like, it's what happens when he plays now he plays in a division with Atlanta and Carolina. He plays in a division with Atlanta and Carolina. So he's going to get some wins.
Oh, you're talking about defense. Right? I was going to say he plays the Packers this week. Yeah, I mean, they play Chicago. They do play Tampa again. They play Denver. They play KC. Minnesota's defense at this point, you do not look at them the same.
Do you think it's going to be consistent? Probably the next guy will be Rodgers, of just seeing guys cruise into their early 40s like it's no big deal. I mean, Brady won a Super Bowl at 40. Or maybe 41. I do think those days are probably going to slow down a little bit.
I think when you talk about Rodgers, Brady, Brees, you're talking about certainly if we just started ranking guys, you'd say Brady number 1 all time, Rodgers top 5
or 6. Yeah.
Brees, if Steve Young is 8 or 9,
13.
Yeah. Or maybe I think Steve probably should be higher, but whatever. But yeah, we're talking about three of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. So no, I don't think this is normal. I mean, humans are living longer, and quarterbacks are getting protected more than Steve ever did. And we were talking about this, Steve. When you watch mobile quarterbacks now, maybe it's partly the rules, maybe they're different. Steve was just different. Steve kind of liked throwing his body around, it felt like. I also think Steve didn't get to play until later, and so when he played, he felt like he could not leave anything on the field. But it does feel like he took a ton more hits than Russell or Lamar. We'll see with Kyler. Kyler doesn't seem to take that many hits, but it's still early. He slides, yeah. So maybe that'll be part of it, but these guys don't run at all, like ever, and they get rid of the ball. Now, Drew got hurt last year, right? God, now are we going to see Jameis at some point?
Yeah.
Like, does Sean have to just see what he's got?
I just keep an eye on it, guy. I'm not saying anytime soon, but if it gets ugly, it's going to be a huge – you just see where the talk – like, it kind of came out of nowhere with Manning. Again, worse, but the NFL, the power of the talking points and just the coaching, the pressure trying to win, you're all in. Shit, we see it all the time. Stuff snowballs fast, man.
And this team plays big games. Like, they're on TV. You're going to eyeball test them.
Yeah, Monday, Sunday nights.
Peyton was throwing knuckleballs, though.
Peyton was way worse than Drew Brees. I hate even using them in the same sentence. Like, that's the worst I've ever seen for a great player. Yeah. It still somehow was able to function. Like, it was crazy. I don't think Drew Brees can function like that.
No, I don't.
Because remember that team, that defense was elite. His defense clearly isn't.
Yeah.